Hello. Hi. My name is Srinivas Avasarala, and I have nothing to talk about. So I thought I'll talk to you about writing, because when you have nothing to talk about, that's the best thing to talk about. But then I was told, I should be speaking for at least 7 minutes on stage. And I thought just writing is not going to do it. So let me just talk about all the 3 crafts that I do, that I get paid for: acting, writing, and directing. But still, 3 times nothing to talk about is nothing to talk about. But then yesterday I was thinking, I've been here for 18 years doing all these 3 things, yet I'm drawing all blank, so what do I do? Then I went back to how it all began for me. Then I thought there's an important lesson that I would like to share with you, and it might resonate with some of you, and even if it doesn't, it's still worthwhile remembering for me. So I don't exactly remember when I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I remember my school days when the teachers didn't have the plan ready for the day. Whenever they had a free period, they used to ask me to step up and entertain the class. And I did enjoy doing that. And I thought humor made life so effortless and easy. And once I went into college, I started writing skits and directing them. And I was consuming films by Rishikesh Mukherjee, Basu Chatterjee, Basu Bhattacharya, and Mullapudi Venkataraman Garu. And one day, I remember a guy from a neighboring college walked up to me. He came to our college looking for me, and then he said, I really enjoyed the skit that you put together for your college day celebrations. Do you think I can get permission to put this skit up in my college? So when I was in college, my skit got remade. So then I went back to the US. I started making money. Not went back to the US, I went to the US. Started making money. I used to get this stipend of about $800 a month for doing my master's, for being a teacher's assistant. And I had bought my first car for about $1,200. I used to have a laptop, my first laptop. And I had access to fast internet, which was a luxury in India back then. And once I went to the US, I started browsing all these websites. These websites just started coming up, idlebrain.com, greatandhra.com, telugucinema.com, andhravillas.com. And I started browsing these websites and started reading about what's happening in Telugu film industry, what all these people are doing. And that was the time when there was a new director coming up. He went back to India. He came back to India after finishing his master's in screenwriting from Harvard University, and he was making this film called Anand. I got really excited about that project, and that's something I wanted to do myself too. And I didn't know how to go about it, but there was a website called bsnl.com. So once you log in there, and if you knew a person's first and last name, and if you enter the first and last name, it gave out the landline number that was registered on that name. So I put some first and last names that I knew of from the Telugu film industry, and I got about 4 phone numbers. And I called the first one up. Hello, Krishnavamsi Garu, what are you up to these days? And then he said, who are you? I hung up. I called K. Vishwanath Garu. I said, I heard that you're making a film. What's going on with it? He's like, who are you? I hung up. Then there's a number called, under the name Akkineni Nagarjuna. I called that number. A lady picked up somewhere in Annapurna Studios, I guess. And then I asked her, I hear you're making a Ramdasu and you haven't cast for Ramudu yet. How tall do you think this person that's going to play Ramudu should be? Then she was like, who are you? I hung up. Then there's this 4th person that I called. He had just made a film called Grahanam, which went on to win the national award. I called him, and he was polite. He spoke to me for about 2-3 minutes. I congratulated him. He thanked me. Then I said, next time you make a film, will you let me know? He was like, sure. But then he made a film called Maya Bazaar. I read about it on the websites, and I was like, oh, he didn't call me. What's happening? And I did not know that these people are never going to call me. And I was an idiot. And they say, to make a film is impossible, and you have to make it before you realize that it's impossible. And I was lucky to be an idiot because I did not know it's not going to work out. I was persistent. I did write to other filmmakers in the US. One of them was a friend called Bala Rajsekarani. He wasn't making a film at that point, but then he said, you can come meet me and we can talk about what you can do to pursue your dreams. So I flew to LA, I met him. He suggested I read a book called Story, written by Robert McKee. And then he also suggested I look up the screenwriting diploma that UCLA was offering. It was a 3-month program. You go there and you start writing your screenplay and your classmates get to critique it. And you also read your classmates' work and then you get to critique it as well. So I started reading the screenplays. I started, Netflix was just starting out then. Netflix had a plan where they send you DVDs and you watch a film and put the DVD back in the mailbox and they'll send you another DVD. So I was watching all these movies and then I was downloading the screenplays, I was reading them, and meanwhile, I just finished my master's. All my friends were talking about job fairs and mechanical engineering jobs, but in my heart, I knew that I'll be making films. I won't be holding on to a mechanical engineering job. But still, I went to the interviews and people would ask me like, where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? I was like, maybe making films. So there was one job that I wanted to get, and there was only one job in and around the area of New York, a mechanical engineering job. And that's the only job I wanted because I wanted to live in New York and see what Woody Allen was talking about in his films, what Martin Scorsese was doing in New York. I wanted to see those streets, live in that city. But I get a call back from that that employer saying that the job that you wanted is just taken by somebody. We'll keep you posted if there's another opening. Then I had bought a camcorder for myself and a tripod. I put the camcorder on a tripod and I made a small demo reel for myself for about 10 minutes. I didn't know what to do with it. There was nobody that's going to look at it, but I still made it. And then a friend of mine recommended me for a job in Missouri, a construction company. So I went there. I started my job. I still was hooked onto all these websites. I was seeing what these people were doing. And I only had these phone numbers, and I stopped calling them. Then these casting calls started popping up on the internet. And one of them was Happy Days. And I did send my reel, and I did get to hear back from the team, but it didn't go much further. And then there was this film called 10th Class. I applied for it. They failed me. And then there was this film called Ashtachamma. Mohan Krishna Indraganti. Mohan Krishna Indraganti was making this film. And the guy that didn't tell me that he was making a film last time now is actually putting up casting calls on the website. So I see the casting call. Then I thought, I have his number. Let me just call him. I called him. Then he was nice. And we spoke for a couple of minutes. I told him I have a demo reel that I would want him to watch. Then he said, please send me the demo reel. Then I burnt a DVD. Back then you used to burn DVDs. So burnt a DVD, put it in an envelope and couriered it to him. And then the morning I wake up to this email that sounded really exciting. He was like, hey, do you think you have vacation? When can you come to India and stuff like that? Then I knew that, I have this part. I go to my boss. I asked him, I didn't tell him that I want to go to India to make a film. I asked him, like, do you think I can get 2 months off? He said, you have 15 days of vacation, and if you can throw some sick leave in there, maybe you'll get 3 weeks off. I didn't know what to do. So I called Mohan Krishna Garu, and I told him that I don't think I'll be able to take up this offer. And one reason being, I knew in my heart that a year from then, I would be making films anyway. Nothing is ever going to stop me from making films. I didn't know why I had that feeling, but that's how I felt. And I rejected the first offer that I got. Then he said, hey, don't be so hasty. I'm coming to New York. He has a film screening in New York that he was going to attend. He said, can you come meet me in New York? I said, fine. Anyway, I don't think I'm going to take this offer up. Why is he asking me to come to New York? I looked up the internet, the tickets, the hotel, the car, the rental car, everything was coming to around $2,000. I thought, let me not waste $2,000 on something that I'm not going to do. I wasn't going to go. Meanwhile, my phone rang, and the employer that I had applied to 1 year ago calls me, and he tells me that the job that I applied to is vacant now, and do you want to interview with us? I'm like, sure. And then they asked me, like, what date works for you? I was like, let me check my calendar. And Mohan Krishna was coming to New York on November 11th, so I pick a date, November 12th. So they buy me a ticket, they give me a rental car, and they book me a nice hotel. I fly to New York. Then on the 11th of November, I meet Mohan Krishna Garu at a bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and he was so excited. He was so excited about screenplay, he started giving me a narration, which I wasn't used to at that point. And I wasn't paying attention because I don't know what was going on. I just wanted to tell him that I cannot get time off. I cannot get time off from work, but he wouldn't listen. He was like, that's okay, but what happens in the next post-interval, what happens before the interval? He gives me the copy of the screenplay, then I take it back home. I read it, I love it. Then I decide, I think I should do this film. I only have 20 days, but Mohan Krishna Garu wanted 2 months. So I thought, let me just go and get started on this film, and let's see after 20 days what happens. So I flew to India just 2 days before the shoot, and on the opening day, I meet Nani, Swati, everybody there, and we start the shoot in like 2 days after I landed in India. We finish the schedule in Hyderabad, then we go to Amalapuram to finish the other part. Then it's been 2-3 weeks by then. Then Nani and I decide that we should go check our emails at a nearby internet cafe. We go to an internet cafe. I get an email from my boss asking me like, hey, when do you think you can come back and join work? It's been 20 days. I didn't know what to tell him because I still needed a month and a half to finish the shoot. But there's another email in my inbox saying that I have been offered a new job from this New York employer, and they asked me like, when can I get started? I told them that I need about a month and a half from now, and I offered resignation to my first job, and I started, I continued to shoot for the film. We almost finished the film, and I was on a student visa back then, but I needed to be on a work visa, the H-1B. So I went to Chennai to get my H-1B, and the shooting wasn't complete. I still needed a few days to finish the shoot and the dub. And luckily, I wasn't offered a visa. The guy says, you are an Indian citizen and you're going to work for the Department of Energy, so we need to check your background. I was like, wow, it's all working out. So he gives me a form called 221G. It's like, your visa is on hold. You never know when you're going to get your visa, and there's no online portals to check. 221G, you just wait for your passport to appear in your mail. So I send that form to my employer, telling him, this is what the situation is. I might need a few more days. Then the employer says, what can we do? We can just wait. So they were waiting, and I was shooting for this song, Hallo Antu Pilichi, and I just finished the song. I felt sick, I recovered, I dubbed for the film, and I still remember the dates. I finished the last line of my dub on the 23rd of March 2008. I come back home, I open the mailbox, there's my passport with visa in the mailbox. I buy my tickets and fly back to the US on the 25th, and I start working from 28th. And this is what happened with my first offer. And the reason I picked to tell this story is, these series of coincidences, like one miracle happening after another, is not just some, I wasn't just lucky. There was something else happening there, because every time, all these years that I wanted to make a film, I was so happy about wanting to make a film. There wasn't a single day where I was like, oh, this is not going to work out. I don't know the reason. Like I said, I was stupid enough to believe that it can be done. I was stupid enough to have fun imagining, me doing it, and it just happened. And the lesson that I learned in life during that point is that, if you make everything that you want into a happy song, and you can keep singing it, even though the other accompaniments are like not in sync with you, life will just make sure that, it will sync those instruments to make your melody a big hit. And even if it doesn't, who cares? I think happiness is the most powerful prayer that I know of, and I know that it works. Thank you. That's all I wanted to share.